All right, welcome to the Max Effort Kitchen podcast. We have a great For the Love of Food show for you today. My name is Matt. This is my co-host Sarah. Sarah, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Still missing Christmas, but life moves on, I
Yeah.
guess.
Couldn't I mean
Go to the countdown already.
yeah, it's interesting because it's my favorite time of year. And but I come out of it and I'm just kind of like, okay, I need a little breaker. But let's take a month break and then February let's go right back into it. Um,
Oh yeah.
it's it's a lot. It's a lot, but I love it. I love the food. I love the togetherness. I love just everything. Sometimes the weather, sometimes not the weather, but yeah, it's such a great time of year. I don't know.
100. Yeah.
I think it's yeah, let's see, what is it? It's October, November, December, favorite months of the year. And traditionally, you've heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. It's the Super Bowl of cooking, in my opinion.
Oh
It
yeah.
is the epicenter of cooking. You get so many great flavors. You have so many real, like in the North Pacific Northwest, we have a vast amount of food to work with, and it's like our season, because
It's
everything's
the holy
ripening for
grail
the
of like
summer.
West Coast cooking for sure.
Yes, the holy grail. I like that.
Oh, all the
Yeah.
fusion food, the squashes, I love squash.
So
We
if
should
you
do
could,
a squash episode.
what's
Add
that?
it to the list. We should do a squash episode. I'm just
Oh,
saying.
let's just add that to the list. Just so everybody knows, Um, Sarah and I had a really nice meeting about 2 weeks ago, and we went over basically the next year of the podcast, and we've really been putting down some great ideas. So, if you're new to this show, just to let you know, this is a show about, obviously, about food, but it's more for like the cultural aspect, the origin, the art aspect of food. And Sarah, I've told you this many times, but food has so many different avenues of which we can go down. And I find myself falling into this category of just the artistic feel of it, the nostalgia, all the feelings that food brings. And that's really what the show is, right?
Food taps into our emotions that very few other things really does.
Yeah.
It's just like such a connector, and it's just so fascinating when you think about all the separate aspects that lead to like the emotions that combines to create the space, the atmosphere, the feelings, the warmth that food does. And it's just like that's what draws me about it so much when it comes to food, the way it all layers. You have the science, you have the culture, you have the history, you have like the art, the nostalgia. It's beyond words, really.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I got into a bit of a debate, and it's a fried chicken debate, and I won't go through the debate with it, but the person that we were going back and forth on, and it was about it's about the technical application of fried chicken. And so, just as a brief kind of backstory on it, I traditionally, and people are going to freak out, I understand, but I traditionally like to do my fried chicken with the skin off. I feel that the coating adheres better, and I think that you get a more consistent product. And for me, that works. Well, he's coming from an aspect of like, listen, the tradition is you go out to your backyard. You're in the down, probably the down south. You're going out to your backyard. You're taking a chicken. You're butchering your chicken. You're skinning it, feather, all that stuff. Or you're not skinning it. You're feathering it, and then you cut it up and you fry it up, and you have a big family meal. And he said one thing that you just reminded me of, which was, if there wasn't tradition in food, I don't think I would like it as much. And that's a really good thing to hear, because the reason why we do all these things in food is primarily because of tradition, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's technique, there's there's functionality, There's all kinds of way that food has evolved in the technique of things, but at the same point, like we wouldn't be doing these things like fried chicken. Like we wouldn't be, brining it in buttermilk and then, for 24 hours and then, frying it if it wasn't for the tradition of it. Somebody had to figure that out, and they figured it out a long time ago, and then they just started doing it because they saw it worked. But the whole basis, I guess, around this show is to understand the traditions and the artsiness and the feels, as you said.
That is such like a beautiful way of putting it. Like tradition is the core, and I never really thought about like I had, but it never really occurred to me to put it in that way.
Yeah.
Because that's what I guess. Because you're right, it's what it's built off of. Like tradition is the root of the evolution and collision of
Hmm.
food development.
Yeah.
It's how, and then we start getting into like the aspects of creativity, and then like food is just such a broad scale like scope and debate. There's so many
Hmm.
avenues. It's just my mind's blown. I need a second.
Well, yeah, and I have I'm going to say infamous term because only the people that know me know this, that I say this about food, but food is subjective.
Yeah.
So I couldn't look at you, Sarah, and say, nope, that's wrong, that's bad, because you did it. You like, there's something you like about it. There's something you like about how you made it. There's something about how you like about how it tastes. It is, in my opinion, it is irresponsible of a person to say, no, you can't eat that. That's the wrong way to eat that. No, it's not the wrong way because it's subjective to the person. It's just like art. You go to an art studio, you got two people standing in front of a piece, an art, let's just say a painting for, whatever. Those two people are going to see two different things. And, as a person, you have your own lenses, you have your own traditions, you have your own history around whatever you're looking at. And I think food is the same way. I grew up eating a certain type of food, and so when I see it, I'm like, oh, that's it. But the person sitting next to me could be like, yeah, that's garbage. But to me, that's like nostalgia. That's like that's homey. That's comfort food, and I just think in this world of ultra judgment, like we need to take a step back and realize that everybody has their own experience with the dish in front of them. So allow them to have that experience.
There can be a level of pretentiousness with food, like there can be with a
Yeah.
lot of things. It gets to
Yeah.
a point like where we start to rip apart and like hyper focus on these very superficial aspects of, food, culture, art, when it's just a like it's like a combining, I'm just forgetting the right word, but it's like
Collaboration.
yeah, it's
Okay.
everybody experiences,
Yeah.
food. It's a confining factor of humanity, and we need to
Right.
let it be that instead of, putting it in boxes. Just like let it flow organically. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, that totally makes sense. And I really like that you said it like that because you do have to let it flow and you have to be open. So, what I meant to be a short description of this show turned into a very fun conversation. But I love everything about food, and I think this show, for anybody who's new to the listening, we're going to talk about. I think I said it already, but origins, culture, influence, the evolutions, the techniques, and something we really want to do is create questions within your head. And so that's your opportunity to, if you are watching live or if you're not watching live and you want to shoot us a message, find us on Instagram. I usually push that stuff out at the end of the show, and I will today as well. So keep listening and you'll see how to contact us. So, Sarah, if you had to pick one meal in the past month that you really, 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 really were proud of, or you want to talk about, what's the most favorite thing you've cooked in the past month?
Ooh, past month. Okay, so I've had this salad that I've been developing for a while, and I'm
Okay.
at a pretty happy place with it right now. But basically, It's a stone fruit based salad. When it's like not in the spring summer months, I use dried stone fruits, like usually apricots, that I soak in a sweet wine overnight to completely break down and expand, and they just get this beautiful jammy texture. And
Wow.
I've been making a chimichurri balsamic vinaigrette. A tiny bit of balsamic, white wine vinegar, chimichurri base. I use Greek yogurt as an emulsion.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite things ever. And then I go in with crispy prosciutto and super fresh mozzarella or burrata, and then have been using baby red butter lettuce, and I just layer it up, and it's so amazing. Some I was reading a few chapters on the layering of salads though,
Okay.
and about how you should like dress and bring out the flavor of each component when it's a staged salad. So I do want to play around with that later too, because I've just been going lettuce. I do the lettuce, I do the stone fruit, then I
Hmm.
go in with the fresh mozzarella and some red onion, and then I do the chimichurri balsamic vinaigrette on top, and then sometimes I'll do like a little bit of hot honey too.
Nice. So that first of all, that sounds amazing. A stone fruit salad is, I mean, you can't go wrong with it, especially this time of year because stone fruit is about to be in season. Um, One thing I was going to ask you is when you're putting your red onion in your salad, are you soaking it?
I'm not actually, because I like the zing of the red onion. Like I
Okay.
like that like bitter bite to
Okay.
balance with the crispy prosciutto, the sweetness of it all. I feel like because there's a lot of acid in the salad already, I liked
Mhm.
like the bigger bitter zing at the end, and I don't want to soak it to like dial back that flavor, because then I think it's just a
Totally.
little bit too much acid on acid.
That really makes sense. Are you said you're using a red onion? Okay. That so
Hmm.
red onions technically they have a little bit more of a sugar content. Um, what I would say, and or what I would suggest you at least give it a shot, and that's what I'm going to say. Throw it in some ice water for 30 seconds, okay, and then pull it out. And what you'll get, what I find I get when I soak my red onions, is I get the hotness of it still. I get the zing, but it doesn't linger. And I don't know if you like, some people like the linger. My wife likes linger. She loves, like, we were eating some Greek food the other night, and she's like, this salad is awesome because of the red onions. And I tasted one. I was like, oh, they're not soaking it. This is okay. This is great. That's what she likes about it. So, what I would say to you is if it's balancing your flavors, don't do a damn thing to it. And I like that you did that. But if you don't, compare and contrast different techniques, and that'll really help the layering of salads. The thing with salads, and you got to remember this, and I'm not just talking to you, I'm talking to everybody out there, is we're eating food in the raw state. And so you're getting bold flavors, you're getting raw flavors, um, what's the word I'm looking for? You just don't, you're not, I guess, putting any kind of heat on it. You're not changing the product. And so something that people don't realize too much about salads is the ability to build a balanced flavor component out of a bunch of raw food and
Yeah.
cold. On top of that, it's cold. And traditionally speaking, flavors are much more vibrant and pungent, and they come out more when it's cold. That's why when, say, you make a soup, and this is a really good experiment to do, make a soup, eat it or whatever, put it in the fridge overnight, and then taste it cold. And when you taste it cold, you will really get a good understanding of the flavor components. And a lot of people, this is something I learned, which was if you taste it cold and it's too salty, you over salted it, because what's happening is that salt is coming forward. So when you go to reheat it, it's gonna be different. So I always say, and I say this with salad dressings too, always salt at the end. Taste it, okay, add a little salt. Taste it, add a little salt if you need it, and then taste it again and get it to the point where you like it. Never add salt in your dressing until everything's in it and it's completely composed.
Would you add like a little bit of salt at the beginning to bloom certain flavors that would need to be bloomed, or would you just completely hold
I
off to the
I
end?
guess it depends. Like if I'm making a dressing that has the egg yolk as the emulsifier, I'll put a little salt on that egg yolk because that will help things get going. But for the most part, I'm always salting at the end. But if
Yeah.
there's something, I mean, with give me an example of what you're talking about.
Let's see, because like salt amplifies flavors. So let's just say
Yes.
I'm gonna be blending up like some red onion and some garlic into the base of the salad dressing before, I do anything else to it. I might put
Mhm.
on a little bit of salt to just like help amplify those base flavors when I
I
go to
see.
blend it.
The only thing I'm going to say about that, and what I'm going to say is, first of all, if it works for you, then it works for you, and keep doing it. Um, but the only reason why, or not the only reason, but the main reason why I'm saying salt at the end is because you can't, if you put too much salt on in the beginning, it's a lot harder to come back from that. And so salt is a beautiful thing to where it will always amplify flavors no matter what process you're at because it's that strong. And so it will still amplify your garlic and your onion. And that's just the way it works. It's one of those type of things that just, I mean, it makes our food better in every way, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's why people, talk about salt. That's the first thing you look for when you're tasting somebody's food is there enough salt? Because you'll know right away it'll be flat. But I guess from my advantage point, I'm just saying I would rather be able to control the salt content. So that's why, and I put it at the end because if you put too much, there are ways there are definitely ways to dial down the salt. If you get done with the dressing, then there's too much in it, right? There's
Yeah.
different ways that we can do it. We can add fat. Fat if you add fat to an oversalty thing, or like if it's a soup, if you add potatoes to an oversalted soup, then the potatoes will actually soak that salt up and take on some of that flavor and help balance out. So,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
Food's just one big web. You affect one thing and then another thing and then another thing, and you
right,
just keep
right.
having to bounce back between all of them. That's why it's so intuitive.
Yes. Well, I think we should transition because it's about that time to transition into our actual topic today, uh, which is hot chocolate.
Yay!
So,
'Tis the season.
the season exactly, and a little backstory. We were going to do this in December, but December just got too crazy, and so we said, you know what, let's push it into January. Now we're here. Sarah, you've done a ton of research on it, and I would love to hear what you have to say. I will poke in every now and then, but give us, kind of. Let's start out with like the origin and like maybe cultural influence on hot cocoa.
So, first of all, chocolate is made with the fruit of the cacao tree, which are referred to as cacao pods.
Hmm.
And basically, cacao pods are comprised of two main components: a sweet flesh, and then about 40 or so cacao beans. And the cacao beans are what you use to make chocolate. So chocolate cultivation has existed for a very long time. The cacao tree is native to both Central and South America. But the first ever evidence of that we see of people using the beans and not the fruit to
Hmm.
make chocolate is around 600 BCE by the Mayan population. It's really, really interesting because there was a very significant, it was very culturally significant to them.
Hmm.
And oh my God, it's just so cool because hot chocolate was our first ever way of processing chocolate. It existed before bar form, before powdered form. It was always in beverage. Um, and what they would do is they would ferment, dry, and roast the cacao beans, and then
Hmm.
they would remove the skin, so they would have just the nibs. And they would build a fire and put a stone, like tablet, over the fire, where they would crush up these nibs to create a paste, which I think is really genius because I'm guessing that the heat helped, break down the cocoa butter solids to make
Yeah.
it like easier to process, then that would be dried with spices. And they use spices like cinnamon, chilies, corn, ear flour to dry
Hmm.
it into a brick where they would then like break that off and mix it with water to create a cocoa beverage. And I actually find the culture like they were very specific. They turned the processing and creation of cocoa and hot cocoa into an art form.
Yeah.
Like it's so crazy because first it was agitated with a special whisk called a Milanillo, which
Hmm.
is really interesting because throughout South America there are still whisks that have the same name that are used. I don't really know if they're like the same style or anything, but I think that the importance of the name is just fascinating too.
Have you seen one of these things? I used to have one. That's the only reason why I know. They're
I
super
have
cool.
a Colombian version. I
Okay.
don't know if it's the same as others. It's very interesting because there's the basic one which we have, but then they can also be very, very beautiful and ornate. It's
Yeah.
like carved wood with like all of these intricate detailings.
Yeah.
And then like oh, they're beautiful. Oh
So
my God.
the one that I had was like it was a wooden rod, and on the end it looked like it had a ball, like
Yeah.
it was a ball, but there was a bunch of slits in it, and then it had this like kind of loose ring around the ball that was stuck on there, and you do this, you would rub
And
it
it
in
just
between your
agitates
hands, and it
everything.
would agitate everything. Yeah, and it would start, and weirdly enough, because you look at it and you'd be like, "What the heck is that thing?" But weirdly enough, it put a lot of, like I'd make whipped cream with that thing, and it put a lot of air into whatever you were using it on. So that's a neat little fun fact there. They do still sell them. Just be careful where you buy them because they can be they can be pretty expensive.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, because now that I think about it, I do think that there is like because that like whole the Milanillo is made for like creating a foam on top of hot cocoa. It's made
Correct.
to aerate things.
Yeah.
And now that you mention it, I think that that is actually traced back to the Mayan culture of cocoa cultivation. Hot chocolate in particular, because the foam was the most prized part of the hot
Mm-hmm.
chocolate. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was very critical, like how they judged the hot chocolate based on the cacao bean sourcing, the color, but then more the flavor, but then the most important was how much foam there was. And besides the Milanillo whisk, they also would pour the hot cocoa between a height between vessels to emulsify things and help create and aerate the whole mixture. Because they would add some cocoa butter that they skimmed off the top back
Mm-hmm.
in,
Okay.
which just like the ingenuity. I'm obsessed. Like I want to get on the roof and try pouring hot cocoa from a height now.
Well, seriously, that's a great idea. Um,
Right?
the one thing that I really enjoy about what Mayans do in a lot of their food, or the Mayans did in a lot of their food, and the influence that they brought was the aspect of spice. And that was something, as I was doing a little bit of research and kind of looking, poking around and seeing what kind of fun facts I could find. The Mayan influence really brought chili peppers to hot cocoa. And I think about that now, and like even to this day when I'm making like a latte at home or something, I'm putting cinnamon, I'm putting clove, I'm putting all that stuff, like just different type of spices in my coffee. And if we think about it, that it came from this. It came from the hot cocoa, and the Mayans put using spice as a way to balance and influence the food, or in this case, a drink. Um, Another fun fact, and this is the funny one. Uh, so the cacao bean was known as to be a very sacred bean, right? Like it was like
Yeah.
something that was very, very sacred, and it was a ceremonial drink and all that stuff. They found that it was they linked it to fertility. And
Oh yeah.
so when they were trying to women were trying to reproduce and all that, they would drink hot cocoa because they thought it made it more fertile. And that, so to me, I'm like, I've drank a lot of hot cocoa. I don't know if I don't know if it's gone that route, but it's an interesting thing on why everything was functional. Like food was so functional back then,
It
and
had
I
like
really, really love it.
Oh, it's just so cool because um, chocolate was traditionally considered like medicinal when it was brought over to
Yeah,
Europe. I think
yeah,
like around the 16th, 17th century. They thought
yeah,
it was a stimulant and both and also an aphrodisiac, which
yeah.
is so cool. And then it evolved past that into more culinary uses, and then it became like a thing for noblewomen to drink. Like they had hot chocolate houses instead of coffee houses.
Hmm.
So interesting. But yeah, back to the cacao bean being sacred to the Mayan populace.
Yeah,
That's so accurate. Like I wish I included more of that in my notes,
yeah,
but there was just so much of it. Like there was certain gods, like religious ceremonies, weddings. It was so interesting. Mayan women were judged on their ability to make hot cocoa. Like
yeah.
it was like connected to their worth if they could make a good chocolate beverage. And I keep saying hot cocoa, but actually traditionally it was not served hot or sweetened. It was like a cold beverage that had a little bit of a
Yep.
grittiness to it because
Yeah.
they hadn't developed the ability to process chocolate to make it smooth.
Yeah, and I think that is a really good thing to point out because we call it hot cocoa or hot chocolate
Yeah.
or whatever, But in the most original form of when it was started, there was, I mean, I obviously they had fire, but there was probably limited resources to build a hot drink. Now we just put water on a stove and boil it and whatever. But then it was like, how can we consume this really sacred thing that to us, um, and be able to consume it in a way that feels like it's honoring the cacao bean? And that's what they did, and it's really neat because I think we take it for granted now. People are like, oh, hot chocolate. You can go buy hot chocolate in a packet. Like, it's like a powder form, right? And yeah, and so, but I think that's what I was talking about at the beginning about this show is that we take everyday things that we use and explore them. And when you explore anything, worlds start to open, and that's what's happened here. So, you mentioned European, and when it got into Europe. So what did you find? Did you find anything cool about that? Like, did it evolve at any point?
Oh, do I have some research for you? Well, first of all, I want to say, so after, chocolate got, very prominent among the Mayan populace, it diffused throughout Central and South America.
Hmm.
And actually, it wasn't the Mayans, who introduced chocolate to the European world. It was the Aztecs, because the Aztecs
Yeah.
had contact with Spanish conquistadors. So, and it was so interesting because so first of all, I think it's really interesting because when we think of Aztec and Mayan hot chocolate, we think of cinnamon, but this is not, the case because South America, Mesoamerica, they did not have access to cinnamon until the Spanish brought it in the
Right.
1500s, which connects back to the cinnamon podcast we did a while ago. And that's one of my favorite things when I'm doing separate bodies of research, and then I
Hmm.
find something that connects, and I go, aha, I got you.
Yep. Yep. I love
Um,
that, because it shows the web, right? It
exactly.
starts to build your web.
Oh, I can go on for a
Yeah.
while. But anyway, it was actually the Spanish tastes that adapted hot cocoa before it was diffused throughout Europe because, back then it was an acquired taste for
Hmm.
the Spanish colonizers. It was very bitter, earthy. Some people just straight out like they didn't appreciate like the significance of it because it was like very much just pure unprocessed chocolate spices, indigenous ingredients. So then they started bringing in like cinnamon, vanilla, honey to sweeten it. They would heat it up. And that's how it's diffused throughout Europe. It was introduced um, to, Spain. And then it was actually really interesting because based on like religious turmoils really affected the way it diffused throughout Europe, which you actually
Hmm.
see with a lot of stuff, especially in, um, medieval times. Like a lot of diffusion was based around religious conflict and religious diffusion,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is crazy because, But apparently, I forget the exact term that they used, but one of the biggest driving factors was this new concept that, we might all be separate in our ethnicities, in our cultures, but humanity is combined. And that's what really gave it a gateway to diffuse throughout Europe.
That's really cool. And the fact that you just said that, I mean, I think you can say that and it could probably apply to any point in life. But it's just a good reminder that like, we all make food. We all have our versions of food, but it connects us 100%.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just like we are all at our core the same. We all have these experiences that
Yeah.
create who we are.
Yep.
And sharing those experiences is one of the it's the reason why I get up in the morning at least, and I feel so many others too. Because
Yeah.
it's just the more you know, the more you learn, the more you share your love of life.
Yeah.
It's what
Yeah.
makes
And
life.
I agree with that. And that's a really good way to put that. So, okay. So we go from Mayan to Aztec, a little bit of European. Um, you've talked a little bit about preparation of it. But what what I want to kind of get an idea of is when it got to Europe, it evolved. Does your notes talk about how much, like what the Europeans did to it?
Oh yeah. So before European influence, chocolate was very much processed to the point of it, it had just broken down and it was formable and shapeable and usable. But
Yeah.
then European technology, um, scientific evolution was able to further the process of the cacao bean into
Yeah.
so many different forms. We start with conching, which is using like these machines. They were actually, it's called conching because the first machines resembled conch shells, which I think
Oh
is so
yeah. Really? I
yeah.
didn't know that.
I
That's
need to
cool.
find a picture of an old conching machine because I gotta know.
Yep.
But anyway, it uses friction and heat over days to continually break down the cacao beans to make it smooth, evenly distribute the cocoa butter, removing the grittiness and making it like completely smooth. We developed the technology to process chocolate into solid form,
Okay.
bars, chocolate bars.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
developed alkalization, which is adding like an alkaline substance to like help neutralize the pH and smooth out the flavor of chocolate. We developed Dutch cocoa powder, the processing to turn it into a cocoa powder. We developed cocoa butter. We developed white chocolate. And then of course chocolate became something to be mass produced, as the industrial revolution occurred. Making it something because before when it first diffused it was something for the elite to enjoy, but
Correct.
as we see with many things in the industrial revolution, it became a consumer product.
Yeah, and I think the Europeans were really big on that. So somewhere in the 1800s, they figured out how to create, like you said, a powder that was dissolvable. And then comes the big creation of the companies we know as Nestle, Swiss Chocolate, and these big
Gluten.
industrial companies that start mass producing it. And then they take it, and I kind of like it because what they're doing, they take it and they almost cultivate it into our culture, into I guess what would be American culture, they turn it into a very seasonal drink. You know, you yeah, we can get hot cocoa in June, but where is it readily available? Where is it on the shelves? Where are you pushing it? And it's always in the winter time. It's always around Christmas. I mean, they have like the hot cocoa bombs. Have you ever had one of those?
I have not, but I've seen them.
You've seen, yeah. They're these golf ball sized balls, and they're loaded with all kinds of stuff in it, but they're formed out of hot cocoa powder and all that stuff. You put it in your cup, hot water, and it turns into this like beautiful hot cocoa drink with somehow it has foam. So so there's some interesting sides of what industrialization does to this product, and we've gone from the really romantic early origins and cultural things that were being done to, okay, now we're going to mass produce it, and we're going to make it out to be something that maybe it wasn't intended to be. But
Yeah.
if we break it down, we still see that it is I'm going to say semi ceremonial, because it's around what, December, Christmas. We talked about
Holiday
this in the beginning,
seasons, yeah.
holiday season. So we're still drinking
Connection
it.
memories, basically.
Exactly. And we're still seeing it as a quote unquote ceremonial drink. And there's all kinds of hot chocolates out there now. Like, you can get anything you want, any percentage of cacao, in it, and or no cacao in it. Hot, milk chocolate versus dark chocolate. Like, the variations are endless. It's insane how much hot chocolate is out there. But that's kind of the beauty of like a timeline on a product. And I also think there's a lot of negativity that comes with industrial advances that maybe dilute what the product is and what hot cocoa is and where it started. But the upside to that, and I always try to look at both sides, but the upside to what industrial advances have done is they've made it more accessible. And there's something to that when food is accessible to all ranges of people. And I appreciate that, because then you can build your own ceremonial thing around this product that was consumed in, 900 CE, like, as a form of fertility and, big ceremonies. So you can get a feel for when you're drinking hot chocolate and you're like thinking, this was being consumed like before time, basically. And how cool is that? And to me, it's really, really neat. I really enjoy it.
Just gives you this, just like, it helps you feel more connected with the product and with food. And that's why I love looking at the history of things. You can appreciate the humanity, the human ingenuity behind it. And it helps you be more in touch and more centered with, your relationship with your food and the state of things today. And that's what I find so fascinating about it.
Yeah, it is really, really cool. And that was a really good synopsis. But here's what I want to do is that you wrote a recipe of a very traditional Colombian hot chocolate. Do you have that recipe with you?
I do somewhere.
I have it on my phone if you'd like me to send it to you real quick. But what Sarah's going to do is that she is going to go over this recipe right now and just talk about it a little bit, so make it something that we're kind of featuring on here. And I encourage everybody to get out and try this. It's good. You're going to hear it and you're going to be like, oh, that's different. But I can tell you from experience, because I've tried it since then, and it is fantastic. So I just sent it over to you. She's also going to post this. She's going to tag me, and I'm going to post it on mine so you all can try it out there, because this is a variation of a hot chocolate that is very, and I'll let you go into it, but it's very traditional in the Colombian culture, correct?
Yes.
Okay, go forth.
It's very interesting because the Colombian culture, it's most central in, but you do see echoes of it in other traditional hot cocos throughout Meso and South America. But basically, Colombian Santafereño is, chocolate Santafereño is a hot chocolate beverage that's made with the inclusion of fresh cheese at the end, like how we would add marshmallows. Cheese chopped into smallish cubes, put in and let slightly melt. And basically what you do is it's focused on, it's very rich, it's very earthy, it's not super duper sweet. The main ingredients are high quality dark chocolate, often a little bit of panela, which I've mentioned before, unrefined sugar cane is used to sweeten it to taste. Usually it's like probably around a tablespoon or so per cup, and then cloves and cinnamon. So it's very rich, very spiced, and then you add on these cheese cubes on top. Basically, what you do is you take your milk, and then you add in some high quality bittersweet or dark chocolate chopped. You stir it up with your cinnamon, your cloves, your panela. You let it all melt and emulsify, and then you take the molinillo whisk that we talked about, and like almost like in a starting a fire position, you rub a bit like back and forth between your hands to agitate it and create the desired foam. And then you add in fresh cheese at the end. Now, there are a lot of regional cheeses because I did a lot of research on this. I talked to
Yes.
people. I Googled. Google is
Mhm.
my best friend,
Mhm.
and I found a lot of varying answers about the type of cheese used. The consensus I came to is many regional varieties of cheese are used in Colombia, but the most common one is queso campesino, or also known as queso pera, which is a fresh farm stretch curd cheese. And stretch curd cheese is basically, when you take your fresh cheese mixture and you put it into like warm water to help it form and like bonds together.
Yep.
Fresh mozzarella is the most famous example of stretch curd
Yeah,
cheese.
that's what I was gonna
Like
say. That's
those
the biggest
recipes.
comparison right there.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
what she's talking about is a much elevated version of what we see in the stores as fresh mozzarella.
Exactly. It's like the
Yeah.
freshest stuff.
Yeah.
Farmer's cheese. Farmer's cheese are usually a fresh, mild tasting cheese
Yeah.
that are made on farms. And
Mhm.
mozzarella is very similar. So the recipe that I have put together calls for mozzarella. Because you actually can't get queso pera in the US because it's made with unpasteurized milk, so it doesn't meet FDA approved standards, which you see with a lot of traditional cheeses throughout the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it's really, really interesting. You also see cheese usage in Ecuador. They'll use like a paneer or a queso fresco, which has a little bit more melt and a little bit less stretch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then in the Mexican state of Oaxaca, they have
Mhm.
queso Oaxaca, which is a similar stretch curd cheese variety,
Yeah.
which is it's just so interesting.
Yeah, and I've had that Oaxaca, and it is there is a how can I put my finger on this one? There's a tanginess to it that is so unmatched and so unique to that. I've never tasted it before, since I've had that, and it is. I mean, we don't want to get too far into the life of the world of cheeses because that probably should be an episode we do. Also, making a note, but I think get out there and try this recipe. Uh, Give it a shot. We're going to post it online. It'll be posted with a link to the show, so you can kind of get an understanding of what we're talking about. And but Sarah put in a lot of hard work on this stuff, and this is actually let me back up. This is a drink that your grandma told you about, right?
Yes, it was
And
really interesting. It's like
your grandma's Colombian, correct?
yes, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
She's Colombian. My mom spent her teenage years in Colombia,
Okay.
so there's a lot of like really cool cultural stuff that I've learned about. But it was actually really interesting because I didn't know about the chocolate Santanfranco, however you say it,
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
like 4 years back. I walked into the kitchen one morning and my grandma has a mug of hot chocolate and she's just putting mozzarella balls in it. And I'm just all like, what are you doing? She's like, you do this in Colombia. It's amazing. And I'm just like, okay. And I tried it. I'm just like, you know what? This is actually pretty good. I
Yeah.
haven't tried it with super fresh water packed mozzarella. And I think that is the end all be all, though.
Well, I wonder how, obviously I think the fresher the cheese, the more fresh the cheese is, the better, the more creaminess you're probably going to get out of it, right?
Yes.
There's a
I think
couple products out there that I want to try now that I think about that.
like
So,
a very
or even
thick hot
or
chocolate.
yeah, or like go get your own, like you can go buy cheese curd and just make your own fresh mozzarella.
That would be cool. I'm
There's
gonna
that.
try it with burrata.
Yeah.
because I
Oh,
feel
burrata would be
like a
great.
very like
Yeah.
creamy like French hot chocolate, like maybe like a Spanish hot chocolate with cornstarch or something more pudding like
Yep.
burrata on top. I think the textures would be insane.
Oh boy. All right. Well, Sarah, this was fantastic, and I have to throw out a giant thank you because this is great. This show is packed of information. We got through a lot of it. Probably left some questions in your head, and that's great. Because you can reach out to us at I'm at Max Effort Kitchen on Instagram. Sarah, where are you at?
Sarah so Chef also on Instagram.
Okay.
And
If
if you guys want more regional hot chocolate varieties, I have a list. I do have a list, and
reach out to
I will
her.
give you all the tea or the hot
Yes.
chocolate. I should say.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. Yeah, reach out to her. She has a handful of things, if not more than a handful, but she is a great resource. You could always reach out to me. We are doing this show every other Saturday at 10 o'clock. It'll be live. So if you want to watch it live and comment while we're doing it, we would love that because that always makes the show just a little bit more fun. But jump on. Listen to wherever you find your podcast. Listen or watch us on YouTube. Other than that, Sarah, you got any last words?
Go try putting random stuff in hot cocoa and let me know how it goes.
There you go. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. And thank you for listening, and adios.